remind people of their values, but reminding people of their values so that they can be reminded of what are they in this for. And that's why I think doing those things right at the get-go before they go silver, of how far do they want to go, what is the purpose of what they want to do with this business, so that you can remind them when they are fearful and don't want to keep going.
That can even be like boiled down to detox too, right? And the fear could just be like fear of discomfort. Like, I just don't want to be bloated for the next however long. And they don't know that there's an end, but you're like, no, trust me. And that's where the trust has to come in. And that's, again, layering on that law of solid ground, right? I actually, Sherry, that reminds me of like what happened last night, right? Is that we didn't necessarily have solid ground with the people that came. And now today we got somebody who signed up who's really not sure that they want to do what they said they were going to do last night, right? But like the layering wasn't there. And I think that the cool part is they recognize the leadership in the room, like the law of respect talks about. Like we kind of gravitate towards those strong leaders. We listen to them, but it was such a flash in the pan that then they didn't have anybody else. Sharon, that looks delightful. You just got delivery. Done and done. Yeah.
It's delivery that I made though. So
that means you know it's really good.
I know it's good. It's a little roasted garlicky Brussels sprouts and homemade burgers. So yeah, it'll be good. Anyways, carry on.
I volunteer Sharon to like corral us for an event where we actually have to do cooking. I think we could eat really well between Sharon and Amanda Baker and Rebecca Hopcraft and some of these other people that, yeah. Anyway, it is just interesting to see how people do gravitate towards really strong leaders in situations, for example, like last night where we had our sip and share. But they need continuous. It's not like, hey, look, I'm a strong leader. You should follow me. Here's your 35 minutes of getting to realize that I'm a strong leader. Now we need to keep layering the trust and layering that those solid ground pieces, like laying that underneath. Okay, so we're going to keep going.
So in our workbook, it talks a little bit about how did Harriet Tubman gain respect? It's one of the questions. Excuse me. So I think there's value in us thinking about how do we gain respect? What qualities or characteristics do we exhibit in relationships that do provide that?
Good question.
Sharon, yeah? You're ready to answer, right? I saw you move.
I wasn't going to. I was just making sure I didn't have pesto on my face.
It's perfect.
There's pesto on the burgers, just FYI.
It's okay. There we go. Yeah. No, but like loyalty for sure, right? And integrity with that. I mean, it's kind of integrity, loyalty. Right, when people see you put your money where your mouth is, even people who did not respect you or respect that before, all of a sudden come along. Right, and whether or not they, in the case of Plexus, whether or not they're gonna come get Plexus off of me, they all of a sudden have a lot more respect for what I do. Right, and I've had so many people even still ask me, are you still doing that? Good for you, and blah blah blah, and they've never shown any interest or have declined.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And position too. I know I'm a sucker for position, right? I always defer if someone is above me, not just in Plexus or in whatever. I always am quite happy to let that person lead me, right? It's not respect your elders is not hard for me, right? Or
I think that, yeah, and I think that's interesting, Sharon, because in this case of Harriet Tubman, she did not have position.
No.
no, and she didn't have position, and she would have been like the same age as a ton of the people in the whole thing, right? But
Ah,
yeah,
The thing
Brenna,
is,
go
she
ahead.
had a success record.
Yeah.
She
I
was
could-
someone who they knew had done this. She had done it successfully. And when she held that gun to someone's head, she was loyal to everyone who she had done this for in the past. And she was loyal to everyone that she was going to do this for in the future.
My brain went to exactly the same thing, because maybe the first time she did it, it was like she was a nobody and people were questioning, but then there would have been news that would have traveled, right? And that's, I mean, that's further ahead in the law of respect when they're talking about people respect others' accomplishments. I think that that's huge in there too. But here's the other piece. Okay, so the first time that she took a group of people, or because we don't know how many people it was the first time, I wonder if she actually believed. Like, it would be interesting to see her personal positioning, right? First time, second time, third time, right? Probably by the fourth time, she's like, I can do this, and you're just going to listen to me, right? And I mean, she would have had to be pretty strong-minded in that she was convinced she could get them out to try, right? But she'd said, I'd rather die trying, like freedom or die trying. But you think about our own leadership and how, I'll use this as an example. Have you guys ever noticed watching other people go emerald? Emerald seems to be the kicker, and I don't know why. But you watch people go emerald, and all of a sudden it's like the lights came on, and it's not because these things actually happened, but it's like they start dressing a little bit differently. They're posing slightly differently for photos. They're positioning themselves slightly differently with their posting. And this isn't like 100% of the time, but I've watched my friends do it. I've watched my friends go through it. And it is their own success changes their belief in their abilities, and therefore that commands more respect from the people they lead. It's just super cool, right? So you just wonder how that worked with her.
I would suggest, with similar ideas, when you think about the first time she went and that do or die, I suspect she prepped all the people that went with her. We do or we die. That set people up with the intention that you're going to follow through with.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, then, as she had a success record, like Brenna mentioned, that success record, as she developed the success record, her confidence in succeeding increased. Every trip, she knew of more places that either were safe or weren't safe. Like, each trip provided all those learnings.
And then her level of influence rose, right? She started to become referred to as Moses.
Yeah, no.
Or even General Tubman, right? And the terms of respect from those people who she would never have encountered before in the position she was in, right? Just incredible.
I love this story. I also love page 69, where it shows when leaders come together at the beginning of a group. And I absolutely love that, because to me, a group of leaders is like herding cats. Like, they are each going their own way. You don't know which way that is. there's a incredible skill and time process to bring leaders into alignment.
To bring followers into alignment too. And I was trying to think of some examples. And the one that makes a ton of sense to me is actually grade 8s, like 12, 13-year-old kids
Oh yeah.
in a classroom with their teacher. Now, it can be herding cats on a good day, right? But you could also say like kindergartners or grade 1s too, like they are really not that different, let's be honest. But
Some of them are leaders.
some of them are, yes. But it's interesting to me to see when teachers have influence and they have leadership over their students, and it's not a positional leadership. Now we're starting to talk about the 5 levels. It's not a positional leadership, like Sharon said, like I'll defer to the person. They are positional, but there's a choice. Like you can follow your teacher because you know you're going to get detention, or you follow them and you listen to them and there's peace in the classroom because they have invested in you, they have influence, they have laid like the law of solid ground. And just a really quick story. My girls had a teacher last year, they had a job share, and one of the teachers was an older fellow. I made an improper assumption of this fellow because I'd only ever seen him out on the playground. He didn't fit the age bracket of most of the teachers in the school, and he always looked really grumpy. And our school is full of really happy people. Like they all really love kids. And so from just what I had seen was, I was like, why is he still teaching? He obviously does not need to teach anymore. He's past his however many years. Probably my girl's favorite teacher of all time. Of all time. They loved him. He had so much respect for the kids. And you knew he loved them. Like this was quite a steep learning curve for me. And then I started paying attention to some of the things he was doing for them, right? And it actually ended up that he has cancer of some sort. So he actually had to stop teaching part of the way through the year. He bought each kid in that class a small stuffed animal and attached to that stuffed animal a piece of paper handwritten by him with a Bible verse and a blessing over that particular child. And because I have 2 children, they were all different. They were different. And they still talk about him and just think that he is one of the greatest humans ever. And so like, just on a case study basis, I'm like, man, I would have really loved to have seen a lot more of the interaction in the classroom, right? But just, especially with a kid that has, more on the ADD tendency, she will honestly, she'll write you off if you can't, like, it takes a lot for her to want to work for someone and want to pay attention for someone. And he had that buy-in from her.
That's the comment of he respected them. I think that's so key as a leader, to respect those who are following you, to really be, when they ask questions, like some of the questions, they can come off and you're like, that's deeper than a surface question, and actually giving the time and respect to giving it that level of thought in responding.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I was kind of starting to think about it like in context of this weekend too. And it's just interesting to watch a group of leaders. It really, really is. It's good.
The best groups of leaders that I've watched and enjoyed interacting with are those who are willing and able to defer to each other's expertise, where it's not that there's one leader in the room, but it's all about the moment and who needs to lead in that moment of what the group needs, and being willing to hand off that baton between each other.
I deferred to Nolan a lot. A lot of things that I didn't know. This is not my wheelhouse. Oh, dear.
I think the whole respect piece, though, is one that it's really important to dig into, because, you know, like you started the conversation, Janelle, about the teacher that respected the kids. The more respect we have for each person in the room and what they bring to the table, the more is gifted back.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know, it's like it builds on itself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Compounding
Yes,
respect.
Sharon.
Yes, Sharon.
I have like a nanny analogy. It's that you all know probably The Sound of Music, though. Maria Von Trapp, hello, right? Those kids respected her because she held the line, right? As someone who has done that with kids just as naughty, I've been through so many childcare workers. Deep respect needs to be earned because you respect them. Yeah.
That holding the line, Sharon, that is key. I think that your word is gold. That's what you said. That's what it is. And we're done.
Yeah, and there's security in that too. I mean, for everybody, I don't know, like even like I think of it just in life, right? There's security in that. Kids respect you, because that's what I know as kids, right? Kids respect you when you hold that line, right? When you're like, no, you said this is how we're doing it, and you don't change it, and you're not flip-flopping all over, you're gonna get that respect. And humans really, adults probably aren't that different. Cool. Yeah.
Can I just ask an aside? Did you decide to become a nanny because of The Sound of Music?
No, but my best friend did.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah. No.
That's cute.
That is
Yeah.
cute.
That does, like, I mean, we skipped over the natural leadership ability piece and went straight into respect, which is great. Obviously, that's where our hearts are, which I love. And of course, this is written twice in here. When people respect you as a person, they admire you. When they respect you as a friend, they love you. And when they respect you as a leader, they follow you. I also want to pose the idea that with all of these things and all of the laws and where we're at, it really does depend on our stage in life, because it can ebb and flow. Like you can find yourself operating super well in one area, and then, you know, if you reassess yourself, either it's just a different angle that you're looking at it. But it's, again, going back to the 5 levels of leadership, you might be at a 3 at one point in time, and you can slide back to a 2. It's possible. So just the awareness of these things that are really important, I think that helps in not.
Yeah, when we go into the next piece, and you're right, we miss the natural leadership ability, because he really does tell us we can all learn leadership. It just may be easier for some people. But the number 3 one that he talks about on page 72 is courage. And I would suggest that Harriet Tubman's courage was exceptional. And perhaps as we look around us and we look at the courage of leaders, we don't always want to follow courage. But courage combined with the other aspects of respect create incredible influence in terms of leadership, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes with leaders, it's sort of like, okay, well, you go first, and then I'll see if I
I'll see if I want to
I'll
work
see if I
with
want
her.
to go with you. I'm gonna sit over here. I love that. A leader does not deserve the name unless he is willing occasionally to stand alone.
And we were just, well, Brad and I were just talking earlier about the leader gets the harder questions, and the higher you move up in leadership, the harder the questions, right? Because you don't need to answer the easy questions, because you've got people that can answer the easy questions because they're growing in their leadership. So it's the hard questions. So really, the harder the questions you get, the greater indication it is that you're growing in the leadership. And I guess so I think, courage, we talked about what are those sort of those aspects in this law of respect, but courage and willingness to tackle hard stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And to walk through stuff with people, right? Willing to get your hands dirty. Because let's be honest, dealing with people can be mucky business. And that's another thing, I think, is being willing to show up for people when it's inconvenient for you.
Yeah.
When they see that, you are willing to be inconvenienced for them on their behalf, to help them do something they can't do themselves.
Yeah. It's interesting, as we look at these laws, there seems to be a layering of the same sorts of words and the same sorts of terminology, and what is a law in one place is a characteristic of another one. It's sort of interesting how it all seems to mesh together. I mean, because success and loyalty, which we've already talked about, are two of the next discussion items on John Maxwell's list in the law of respect. So maybe a question for everybody, just as a bit of a thinking process. Have you ever been in a situation where you lost respect for a leader? And how did you respond? How did you deal with it?
We're going to keep politics out of it, right?
Yeah, we probably got to keep politics out of it.
Okay.
And religion. That goes the
Okay,
two
so
taboo
we've
subjects.
taken religion and politics off the table. Gotcha.
Just for this question, perhaps. I'll start with an example. And this is a story that I just recently read, and it was about a student taking an advanced English course in preparation for university. And they analyzed, I believe it was a poem, but it was a piece of writing, and they analyzed it and provided the analysis to the teacher. And the teacher failed them. No, that's wrong. And the student came back and said, well, this is what I read, and this is how I interpreted it, and this is the reason for the analysis. And the teacher said, no, that's wrong. And the student took a look at their goals, which were to work in that field, which was why they were taking the advanced English class, and took a look at the other options for teachers in a large school, And there were no other advanced English classes. So there was a general English class taught by a teacher whom this student had had before in a class and whom they very much respected. And they simply dropped out of the advanced English, paid the price, so to speak, to join the class where their creativity and their knowledge and their growth was nurtured by the regular English teacher. They simply lost all respect for a teacher who couldn't hear a different opinion. And so in that case, that's how that person dealt with that leader. They simply disengaged and were done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we have the option to do that. We don't always have the option to disengage and have nothing more to do with the leader that we have either lost or are losing respect for. Anyone else have examples? Francie, yeah. Yep, go ahead.
Hey guys, I know I haven't been around lately. I've had so much going on, but so I was just thinking, this actually happened at the end of this past school year. And you know how everyone's doing their best, especially in the school, everyone's doing their best. Everyone's stress levels are, you know, up here. Yeah, so, and I'm not back at the school yet, but towards the end of the year, there was a meeting and it was virtual. And I wasn't part of the meeting, but I was in the room. It was before school, and I was listening to administrators talking to the teachers. And there was one of the administrators had said something during the meeting about, it was towards the end of the year, and you know there were still concerns about still now COVID and you know how things were being done, and there was some comment to the effect of, well, you guys didn't do this last year. So it was kind of, I can't even remember exactly, but it was kind of like, well, we did this because you guys didn't do this. And it was an administrator saying that they were kind of, you know, lashing back at the teachers for what they did. They said, oh, I know what it was. At the end of the year, after everyone had been virtual, the one grade wasn't comfortable with you know, picking stuff up directly from people. So the administrators did it, and they came back to, they said it was fine. They said, fine, you guys don't want to do it, we will do it. However, they turned it back around on them in this meeting and said, you know, well, you guys didn't show up, so we had to do that. But that wasn't how it was before, you know. So they were like, we can do this, but then turned it back around on them and said, you know. So I was like, wow, like it just wasn't appropriate. And I just thought it was very unprofessional. And, you know, the morale was already struggling just with things going on. And it made it a lot worse. And I'm not there now, so I'm not really sure what's happening, but and you know what, like I said, everyone's stress level is so high, but it just wasn't appropriate to, you know, to tell them they can do something and then throw it back in their face and say, you know, I just lost some respect for them that day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll bet
sure.
that alongside that, in turn, they lost the loyalty of a lot of people as well,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
that flows straight into that. What he says here, in a culture of constant change, turnover, and transition, loyalty is an asset. And in the constant upheaval that we have had, I would say it's even more. Like, all of these things are amplified. Respect, huge. Loyalty, huge. Keeping people engaged and continuing to lead well. But my goodness, how do you even, right? But I mean, the great example for someone, how you even, John Maxwell, you know, when all of this started to happen, the amount of free stuff that he put out and was like, hey, we are an authority in leadership. People are really going to need this, you know, and going forward. And so I think, honestly, this all just reminds me about how much people around us need us to step up. And same thing with you, right, friend? Like the people that you worked with, they need to see people that they respect, that aren't getting sucked down the drain somewhere. And yeah.
Yeah, they just, and you know, my teacher friends, they're like, they just don't feel like that, you know, the administration has their back. And that's, so yeah, the morale is just, and it's sad because, you know, and teachers are underpaid and they put in all these extra hours, and now a lot of them are like, why am I going to even, you know, take my time away from my family to give all this extra time, you know? So yeah, it's sad. It's tough all around. Like I said, it's tough. I know it's tough on the administrators, and it's just, you know, it's just a difficult situation.
Mhm.
So
That's a great example, though, I think, of the law of respect going awry.
Yes.
A miss that had consequences. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, now I'm thinking of it at even down with at the bottom of page 73, right? When a respected leader asks for change, followers are willing to embrace it. And in using that as a, for instance, I'm going to guess that there isn't going to be a lot of embracing difficult change from the administration. They're going to need a lot of rebuilding work in there in order to gain trust back.
Yeah, I like how that sentence follows: when leaders who are not respected ask for commitment or change, people doubt, they question, they make excuses, or they simply walk away. Yeah.
I highlighted a lot.
Yeah. So then maybe the question for us is, what do we need to do to level up, so to speak, in the law of respect? What things can we do to increase whatever we think our rating is? So if we think our rating is, and I'm just going to pick a number, 7, how do we go to 7.5? What things do we need to sort of be aware of or intentional about? And I think Francine mentioned a really good one when she said, you know, be honest, be truthful, and don't change your story midstream in terms of implying something different. What else?
I think presence is a big thing. I was just thinking about Linda is consistently present and has won the respect of a lot of our team over the years because she chooses to be present and show up for everything. Linda, if you're still hearing, she's saying that her internet isn't very good.
Right.
But I just was looking at my Facebook memories the other day, and something popped up from years ago, years ago. And it was a shot of a Zoom. And there you were on the Zoom. Like, of course you were there, because you're always here and it's great, right? People know they can depend on you, right? And that in such a, perhaps a small thing, I'm not saying that it's small, because in my estimation it's big, but maybe for you it feels like it's a small thing, but remaining visible and showing up for yourself, for your sidelines, for your team, for your community, that builds respect a ton.
What else? Brenna? Oh, Sharon then.
I can talk if no one else is going to. No, but I think loving people, right? When you increase your influence and your ability to love, right, and pour into other people's life and do all of that, then your respect does go up, right? Because it's, you're a lot more likely, it's human nature to follow someone that you know cares. Okay? It's easier to trust that person. I just think being even more intentional about that, right, and not growing tired of it, even when you want to hide.
Yeah, being there even when it's hard.
I had written down your awareness of your values. We talked a lot about values this yesterday, and continuing with authenticity. If you are aligned with your values and you're consistently authentic, I think that really does build respect for people. And I mean, vulnerability can go alongside there too.
Well, and I think for me, vulnerability and courage are almost synonymous. I think it takes a lot of courage to be authentically vulnerable in a way that gifts value to other people.
It was funny, we were actually talking about vulnerability today because I made some mention. We'd picked up Lucas and we're kind of rehashing the weekend, and I said, yeah, Dad totally like wrecked my moment. And Nolan's like, what? And I said, yeah. I said, I was like getting choked up talking about this particular thing. Oddly enough, I started to cry. And he made a joke, which was fine. It didn't matter. He's like, oh, but I was saving you. And I said, no. I said, you never have to save me from being vulnerable with my team. I'm okay with them seeing me cry. I'm okay with them seeing me moved to tears in an emotional way, because to me, yeah, it's vulnerable, but it also shows the emotional tie to the thing. I was talking about the first time I deposited a larger sum of money into our bank account. And it was cute. Like, it didn't wreck the moment. He knew I was kidding, but it was neat to be able to have that conversation and be like, no, I'm good with it. Like,
so I actually think that's an example that's a really awesome example to dig into. If you're okay with that, Janelle.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Because that's two perspectives. You were perfectly fine with the moment. Yeah. You were perfectly okay with the vulnerability it showed. And someone else in the room was uncomfortable with the pause, with the vulnerability, with the tension that was developing in the room, and chose to use, very intentionally, humor to diffuse the discomfort of the moment. I mean, and we all do this. Like, so and that's, I guess, where I want to go with this is that we all do it. How long of a pause can you be comfortable enough waiting for the next person to speak while they think about it? Or do we, and I've been real guilty, hop in because we're not as comfortable with the pause?
Or we think someone needs saving. That was what he's like, I thought you needed, I didn't know that if you were going to need a little bit to recover. And I was like, I've cried at this story at least half a dozen times in the last 2 years. It's fine. It's still one that is really there. And so it was a really cool conversation to be had, because, you know, the other perspective too is, if our roles were reversed, would he want me to jump in and save him if he got choked up, right? Whereas I would leave the pause. I'd be like, he's good, he's fine. This is actually going to connect a lot with people in the room if they see this emotion, right? But it's interesting. I might have to ask him that. If the same thing happened, would you want me to jump in and rescue you?
Are we saviors? It's interesting, very interesting.
It wasn't, and for those of you guys who didn't watch, it wasn't inappropriate. It was funny. We moved along, and I don't think that it actually wrecked the moment. I think it was fine, but yeah, it's interesting. And vulnerability was one of those things we talked about yesterday. So many layers, you guys, so many layers. Like, we're talking about, I was chatting with one of the gals who was there, and she doesn't post on Facebook. She doesn't really do the business. I think she probably would talk to people about the business, but she doesn't do the business. And she said to me, she's like, I just read your posts and I just don't know what to post. Like, I think, oh, I could never post that. And of course, flippantly, I said, well, you need to realize that a lot of those are like copied and pasted, like I told you, right? Like, I don't think of all of the things that I post, but we went back to values. You will be able to be authentic in your posting if you are clear on what your values are and you write about those things. So Sherry, what were your top 3, or what were some of your top values? Do you remember what they were?
I have to get my notes.
Integrity was one of them.
Yeah. I know, because the example I gave was family didn't hit the top 3. And it's like, are you supposed to have family? Like, is that something that you think should be there because of other people? Or is it really a value? And so what I said was, when I went through them, it didn't hit the top 3. Which actually created a comment in the room.
Well, I think it's funny too, because we had kind of a couple of those moments, right, where I was, again, got choked up again, and I'd said that leading and loving the people in the room and on our team has been the biggest blessing of my life. And so I was getting choked up, and I said, of course, my kids and my husband too, but it kind of went on the same, yeah, them too. But so I'm pulling out my
Purpose. It was purpose
purpose.
and integrity and wisdom, I think, were the top 3.
Yes, no, you're right. Now that you said that, I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody was shocked.
Family for me.
Someone decode.
Yeah, we might have to have
top.
you might have to put it in the chat, because you're breaking up, Linda.
Yeah, put it in the chat. We'll read it.
You're right. Your internet is not good today.
It's not good. And then, I had to, like, my first inclination was the first thing on the list for me for values was joy. And then I was like, is that shallow? Sherry was like, wisdom. And I'm like, joy, right? Like, no.
Personalities.
These are the things that I resonate with. And these are not just flash in the pan things. Like, I have always, like, for years, I've had on my profile, joy chaser, right? And it's true. Like, something doesn't bring me joy. Family was number 4 for Linda, is what she's saying.
Yeah.
Number 4. Yeah. And my ADD and lack of focus looks at the list, and I'm like, oh, so many good things. I've got a 1, I've got a 1 1/4, I've got 1 1/2. That my top 3 can have. We can do it that way, right?
Whatever way works for you.
All we know is that joy is on the top.
So just the last, or we don't have many minutes left, but the question that they asked in here about how do you react when you're placed in a group of strong leaders? And it's interesting because when I read that, I thought I resonate with Sharon's thoughts on that. It's like, let's let them go at it, because I'm just happy to go along with, how it's going until I'm not. And then maybe we get into a discussion. Does that resonate with you, Sharon?
Yeah. It resonates with me too.
So my question is, have you ever been in a group of strong leaders where you're like, yeah, there's at least 3 or 4 who could lead this, I'm just going to sit back and let them duke it out. And they vote you as the leader.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That shows a lot of building on the other laws that we've been talking about.
That's the one that I've decided that there's actually dangers in sitting back.
Danger.
Okay, this might be good advice, Sharon, for us.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
I often find myself in a position where the others, typically if I'm in a room full of other strong leaders, I know them. I don't often put myself into a position, or haven't had the opportunity, put it that way, to be in a position of in a group. I guess I am now, but I don't have a lot of experience there yet. Most of the people in the room know that I'm opinionated and that I have something to say. So like if I get on one of our Canadian Jewel calls, if I don't say something, Ken will be like, okay, Janelle, what do you have to say? What's your input? I'm trying to sit and not be the first one to unmute and deliver my thought, because other people can have thoughts too. And I can just sit here and nod. It's fine.
I think it's an interesting discussion, though, because really our goal is to develop every face on this screen as a strong leader.
Mhm.
Like
Stronger.
Stronger leader, strong leaders. And it's interesting how we engage in a group of strong leaders.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I will be completely vulnerable with that. I often feel like if I get into a room, I do love it though. It's not a bad feeling. I love entering into a room, like say with the other jewels in the company. I'm going to be going down to Arizona to meet with like over 100 jewels, and I can't wait. And I'm so excited because I know I will not feel like an authority in the room. I'll still have opinions, but I'll probably sit back and not talk, which is so funny because it's not my personality, but I like to observe too. I really do. Awesome. Our next law is the law of intuition.
I think that's that gut feeling story, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we get to start talking about the Apple success story and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Interesting stuff. Oh, and as I'm just reading here, just so y'all know, they're going to call us out, say leaders are readers. And I love that he's an authority and says this, because you have no idea how many times I've heard people say, oh, I just don't read. Okay, that's your choice. But if you want to make more than a brain surgeon, you might have to crack a book. Just say. Might not, don't know. Awesome. Anything else before we? And I apologize for anyone watching the video that I did not start it until 11 minutes in. But it was only 11 minutes.
What we said at the beginning wasn't that good. It's okay.
No,
it
you came
wasn't
in
that
at a
good.
better time.
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience. Awesome. And thank you guys for giving us a different part of your weekend so that we could have our retreat. If anyone is interested in joining in on the information that is still being fed into the group for the retreat that we had this weekend at Manitou Springs, just talk to Sherry. There's a virtual option, ticket option that is still available. The amount of stuff that you get is certainly beyond the cost of the ticket. So just talk to Sherry and she will get you hooked up. I don't know what that looks like. So thank you guys. Have a great night. We'll
And we'll see you next Saturday at the regular time.
And Tuesday 1st.
Oh, yes, Tuesday 1st.
Tuesday 1st. Okay. Bye.